passing lane. Sky's a jam. Dynamite dunk and the crowd loves
it. Welcome back to Pistons Intellect, your home for the most informed Detroit Pistons news and analysis. I'm your host, Jack Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack_Kelly_3on3. And before we get into today's show, if you're feeling so kind, please hit that subscribe button, please hit that like button, and drop a comment below to discuss Pistons hoops. Today we'll be reviewing the Detroit Pistons 112-124 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So let's get into it. The Pistons fell to the Thunder by 12 points, and for much of the fourth period they were down by 15 to 20 points. And look, there's plenty of areas we can start with in this one in terms of the negatives and how the Pistons got down by so much. And to be honest, overall, weren't really in the thick of this game for much of it. And some of that was just to do with a lack of intensity. Didn't feel like they brought that energy that they've brought in the past three games on the defensive end. They probably for the first 5 to 6 minutes they did, but they just couldn't hit a shot to save themselves in that first 6 or 7 minutes of the first quarter to capitalize on their sort of defensive work. And that sort of leads me to the main takeaway I want to discuss, at least to open the show, and that's to do with that starting lineup. Now, I think we all knew from preseason when Monty rolled out the Cade, Killian, Assar, Stu, and Duran starting lineup that spacing is a major concern. But honestly, in the preseason, even when they haven't shot it well, they were able to win two preseason games against Oklahoma City Thunder, albeit without SGA in at least one of those. And then, the first 3 games of the season, they've made it work. The defense has been good enough to offset any of those spacing issues. But I think the main thing that came to my attention yesterday was, one, the Thunder were just paying no respect to Killian Hayes or Assar Thompson. They were packing the paint. They were able to help and dig real deep on Cade drives. So if Assar was in the corner, his man was digging all the way down to the low block to get in the way of Jalen Duren's role and sort of disrupt Cade and just provide that extra help. And I'll get to this later with Cade's turnovers, but that was a factor in some of his turnovers. And the difference, though, because the Bulls had done that, Miami were doing that. The Cade's been getting trapped in pick and roll and doubled and that kind of thing. He's been getting that his whole career. But the thing yesterday in particular that was different is Chet Holmgren is just his length and ability to protect the rim and sort of move around sort of really bothered Jalen Duren. And although the Pistons have played Bam Adebayo, who's an excellent defender and one of the most versatile defenders in the league, he just doesn't have that same length that Chet has. And Duren was able to sort of combat that a little bit because he's a bit bigger than Bam and he could overpower him a little bit in instances. And I think yesterday you saw OKC sort of just pack the paint, and then Cade just wasn't even able to flip lobs over to Duren. And it was very, very congested. And I'm sure everyone's seen some screenshots on Twitter of sort of the crowding of the paint. But Chet Holmgren was sort of the guy that really mucked up that partnership between Cade and Jalen Duren, which up until yesterday had looked, I haven't looked at the numbers on it, but just from the eye test, it was amazing. Just all the sort of versatility and all the actions they were able to run off that pick and roll. They just couldn't get that flowing yesterday, and the scoring just dried up. And that's where the spacing really stuck out. So I'm not saying a lineup changes in order for tomorrow's game against the Blazers, but I thought it'd be worth just going through some numbers here. Just some lineup numbers per cleaningtheglass.com. So any lineup that fields Cade, Killian, and Assar, they've played 141 possessions together, which is we're still talking small sample size. We're 4 games in, but they are minus 15.4 points per 100 possessions. So whenever those 3 are on the court, the Pistons are giving up 15.5 points per 100 possessions to their opponent. They're negative there, which is, really bad considering Killian and Assar are meant to be in there for the defensive purposes. The offense is horrific. So then if we look at lineups with Cade plus Assar and then no Killian on the floor, we've got a 51 possession sample size and they're plus 46 points per 100 possessions, which is, small sample size, but that is just, it's extremely high number to put it on. Like anything, if you're a plus one in anything, that's decent, that's good. If you're getting the plus 8, plus 9, plus 10, that's awesome. But look, we're talking small sample sizes, but basically Cade plus Assar plus Jalen Duren and Stu and either Burks or Ivy, those lineups are plus 46. So just adding in that other scoring threat, Burks, who's been a terrific three-point shooter so far, and Ivy, who sort of shot the ball really well yesterday, and I'll get to him later. But just adding in that threat at the 2 position that the defense kind of has to honor, you can see there's quite a significant difference. And I did look up to see if Cade and Killian had played without Assar on the floor, but there hasn't been any of those lineups run out yet. So this isn't me bashing Killian Hayes. I think he's been really solid. He's been really good defensively. He had 2 really good plays in the first quarter yesterday, really bothering Shea. And look, that mid-range jumper, it's there. He made a couple of tough ones yesterday. But the thing with Killian, this is the same with Assar and Stu to an extent, but mainly with Killian and Assar is the teams, even if they're making shots, the teams, they're just not going to respect them. And Killian in particular, because he's a 2 guard, because on this roster you already have Alec Burks, you have Jaden Ivy just coming off the bench. His position importance to this team isn't as high as Assar, who, I'm going to spend a whole 5 minutes talking on him next, but what he brings for this team, wing defense, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan, already a top athlete in the league, 1 percentile type of athlete. I just don't think you can play them together. And I think the Pistons came up with a true test to say an OKC, who are going to be a playoff team, at least it feels like, just with the talent they have. And you just saw with a smart coach like Mark Dagnall, he just packed the paint. He used Chet just to deter everything, and the Pistons sort of come undone, and those spacing issues were glaring. So, like I said, the Pistons have a back-to-back coming up. They play Portland on Wednesday night, and then they play the Pelicans on Thursday night. The Portland game is at home. I think Monty still runs out the same lineup. The team's only 2-2. It's not panic stations. It's still very positive. I thought even yesterday, even though they gave up 120 points, the defense still looked really good at times. I was still very encouraged. They had more lapses. Jalen Duren probably wasn't his best defensively like he has been, but I feel like when Duren is sharing the court with Stewart, those two are causing issues. They're still rebounding really well. So I think we see the same lineup against Portland, and then the Pelicans. If the Pistons lose to Portland, and it's sort of that same kind of thing in terms of they play solid to okay defense, but they just cannot hit a shot, that's when I think we might see a change in the lineup. My guess would be, and my gut feel would be, Alec Burks is the guy to come in, at least until Bojan and Monte Morris are back. I feel like Alec Burks will get the nod to start. We saw it in preseason. But yeah, look, Coach Monty Williams said after the game, he was disappointed in the discipline, and he thought it was started from the jump. He didn't specify the starters, but he felt like this was the first game that the team just didn't adhere to sort of the standards they've set. And I would suggest he's talking about it on the defensive end. So look, I think the way that starting group has started and the team overall has looked, I think they definitely get another game against Portland. Wouldn't be shocked if Burks is put into the lineup, but I think you give it another go. Portland are struggling. I believe they're 0-3. Pistons, they should definitely win this game. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy win, but they should beat Portland at LCA. A loss there, you head to New Orleans. That's going to be a very tough game, another test to see where these guys are at. Maybe we see a lineup change there. But look, the data even if it's a small sample size, is telling us that starting five is quite a net negative. And I know Monty isn't a huge analytics guy. He's spoken about that in sort of some media in the preseason. But even the eye test is telling you that teams are just packing the paint, and it's making life hard for Cade Cunningham. So, look, it's going to be interesting against Portland tomorrow. I think they win that one. I don't want to be too confident. But against Portland, I'll be very interested to see what lineups are rolled out. Now, moving on. I want to shine a bit of a positive light on a couple of guys. We don't want to be all negative here. We love being positive. We love uplifting the young guys and giving them some shine. And I think the first guy, and this is an obvious one, is Assar Thompson. He finished with 15 points, 10 rebounds, 3 blocks, and a steal. And honestly, the highlight for me was watching him defend SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Per NBA.com's matchup data, when guarded by Assar Thompson, Shai shot 2 of 8 from the field, so 25% field goal. Assar forced him into 2 turnovers. He got blocked by Assar twice. And Assar, if you recall, I believe it was in the first quarter, also forced a jump ball. So it's like a half turnover. So he was just giving SGA fits. And the thing I've really enjoyed watching, and we've seen this in Summer League, sort of in preseason, and now we've seen it a couple of times in the regular season, is Assar blocking players' jump shots. I believe it was in the first quarter, SGA tried to get to his patented sort of mid-range where he sort of lulls and does this herky-jerky dribble to get to around like the nail area. And Assar sort of stayed on his hip, and then SGA thought he had enough room, but Assar's second jump or recovery time, reaction time is just insane. And that paired with his wingspan and strength and that, he just had this really good block. And it ended up creating a transition look for Cade, who I think his shot actually got blocked on the other end. But, just catching SGA off guard, who's one of the most sort of cerebral players in the league. And even though SGA is not the most athletic, he's normally able to get his shot off over anyone, at least in the games I've watched. So to see him kind of just be a little bit rattled almost by Assar, it was really cool to see. And he even had against Zach LaVine and the Bulls a couple of days ago, he blocked one of his jump shots in the last quarter. So just sort of watching him catch guys off guard has been just sort of fun to watch. And look, I'm guessing teams might catch on to that a little bit, and players, but it's just blocking jump shots is one of the hardest things to do in terms of getting the timing right, having the physical tools to do it and not foul. It's pretty special if you can do that. His defense on SGA was just outstanding. I think SGA totaled 9 points when guarded by Assar, so still got the points, but he had to work extremely hard in those 8 to 9 minutes he was guarded by Assar. And then the other thing with Assar is he had the career high 15 points, and I think most of those came in the second half, especially in that third quarter. He had 4 transition sort of finishes, couple of dunks, couple of layups, and he just glides. He sort of looks like he's almost running on his tippy toes. He just glides through everyone. Even when he dribbles, he has such long strides and just able to sort of fly past everyone. And his catch radius on lobs is insane. I think it was Killian who threw one to him, a lob up from like a 3/4 court or something, or half court, sorry. And Assar just grabbed it with one hand. There's not many guys that can do that in the league, and it's just such a weapon for this team who, in the past, fast breaks, just going off the eye test, have always been a problem. Unless Hamidou Diallo was on the floor, they could often just look clunky, or just, this team's just sort of had issues running the fast break at times. So just having that is such a weapon. And I think in the first 3 minutes of that third quarter, he had 3 transition finishes, 6 points, and I think got the Pistons within 6 to 8 points. And he's just so dynamic. His passing as well. He didn't get as many assists last night, but he still made a heap of nice passes. So as he tightens up that handle, and as the jump shot comes around, I still think that's a while off, but yeah, he's blown my expectations out of the water. I was not expecting him to look this good. So to see him playing like this is really special. So Pistons fans should be very, very excited about Assar Thompson. The other young guy I wanted to give some shine to was Jaden Ivy. He had a nice 20-point game, dished 3 assists, and had a steal and a block on 7 of 13 shooting from the field. And he did all that in around 19 minutes of action. So really sort of solid, productive game in limited action. I thought in the first quarter he was pressing a little bit, which is something we've seen him do in the preseason and as the regular season has begun. It feels like he's just trying to come in, get a bucket to get himself going. And he did that in the first quarter last night, had a couple of sort of errant shots, particularly one in the mid-range. It was very forced. But honestly, after that first 4 to 5 minute stint, I feel like he was much more under control. I think knocking down a 3 just sort of settled him down. I think it was at the start of the second quarter, but kind of calmed him down. And yeah, I think especially in the second half, he was just much more under control, playing with a more steady pace and looking more like the Jaden Ivy we saw to close the end of last season. He had a nice floater. He had that step back 3, which was nice to see him sort of mixing in those off the dribble shots a bit more, because that was really one of his major growth spots last season, was that mid-range pull-up and the pull-up 3. Just seeing him mix that in a bit more was good to see. I've seen him do that in the Hornets game. He had a nice mid-range, and then yesterday a step back. So just getting the confidence back in those areas. I feel like he's still trying to feel out when to attack and when not, and sometimes it looks not great like in the first quarter, but sometimes in the second half he looked really good, just attacking. Like I said, got that floater, got to the free throw line a couple of times. And yeah, I think on defense it's still hit and miss at times. He'll have really good on-ball possessions, like yesterday he had the steal and the block, so he's there making plays. But he'll also had a couple of plays where I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was him sort of guarding SGA, I think towards the end of the second, or regardless, the clock was winding down. It was kind of like an ISO situation, and you could just see Jaden was just defending a bit upright and aggressive, too close to Shea, and you could tell Shea knew that as soon as he drives, he's just initiating this contact, and he got to the free throw line because on the bonus, and he's just able to sort of blow by Jaden and clip him on the way through and draw that foul. So they're still sort of positioning things with Jaden. I think his intensity's been better for sure. And it is early in the season. People are energetic. He's in a position where he's trying to prove himself. So you would hope he can keep that same energy. But look, I think he's been better defensively. I still think he's got a lot to do in terms of, like I said, on ball and off ball. There's both still some areas he needs to improve upon, and I think that's ultimately why he's coming off the bench. But look, a really solid game for him, and I still think he should be starting. But I've said it in the last episode, I get why he's not. I get Monty Williams is trying to build a defensive foundation, it feels like. And look, for the most part, apart from yesterday, the defenses look really, really solid, especially for a young team. It's looked really good. So I get why he's coming off the bench. I think he should be starting, but hey, that's why I'm sitting here, and Coach Monty Williams is the highest paid coach in NBA history. So yeah, really solid game for Jaden, and excited to see how he goes in this upcoming back-to-back. The final player I want to take a look at tonight is Cade Cunningham. I don't think it's a stretch to say that was his worst performance of the young season. He finished with 17 points, but it came on 5 of 15 shooting and a very poor 7 turnovers. 7 turnovers in any sort of form of basketball is way too many, even for a guy who has a ball in his hands as much as Cade. And I think not alarming, but disappointing thing was that at least 3 of those were sort of unforced, kind of lackadaisical turnovers where they were probably quite easily prevented from Cade just not trying to bite off too much he can chew with the pass, or just putting a bit of extra zip on the pass, or just being a bit careless at times. It feels like there was one in particular where he went to do a behind the back dribble and he just exposed the ball far too much for Lou Dort just to casually swipe it and take it down the other end for 2 points. And Pistons overall only had 16 turnovers, which for them is a season low, but it just felt like some of the turnovers were just absolute backbreakers. And Monty Williams said that following the game, that every time the Pistons would get to within 8 to 10 points on a night where they were not at their best, to try and make that run and put the pressure on the Thunder, it just felt like they would cough up transition bucket, whether it was Lou Dort taking down the other end or Chet Holmgren getting a wide open transition three. There's just that's where the Pistons came undone. It felt like their transition defense wasn't there, and a lot of that came off the back of some of these turnovers. And I think for Cade, it's been a little bit of a pattern throughout his career to be a bit turnover prone. You're going to get turnovers with a player like Cade. Like 3 to 4 turnovers a night is probably, I think that's where he will sit, especially in this role. I think that's where a lot of players sit when they are a high pick and roll guy. Like Chris Paul's an exception. I'm not saying 3 to 4 is great, but anything around 4 to 7. Once you hit 5 or more, that's too many, and that's when you start to zoom in and have a look at some of these. And that's when they are careless turnovers. They're quite frustrating. So I think it'll be interesting to see how he goes against the Blazers tomorrow night. I think him and Jalen Duren should be back to, I guess, at least some much better form, with Ayton sort of being the center there. I think Williams might be out, but it should be very interesting. I think he should have a lot more success in the pick and roll with Chet Holmgren not there, who, credit to Chet, I mentioned it earlier, but he's just an excellent defender. Yes, he lacks strength, but he's just such a nightmare. When you have him in the paint with his long arms and just shot blocking ability, he made it very tough on Cade and Duren to get that chemistry flowing. So I think against Ayton, they should have much more success, and I expect him to bounce back and those two to be back on the same page as they had been for the first 3 games. So look, 7 turnovers is too many. Hopefully he can cut them down to around that 3 to 4 mark, because turning it over is just a killer, especially for a team that's been struggling a little bit offensively to get going. When you're giving up easy buckets, it just makes it incredibly tough, and especially when they're coming from your best player. So hopefully he can rein that in, and I have confidence he will. But I guess the positives for Cade was he was much more aggressive, and we saw that in the Bulls game as well, and he did the same against OKC. He came out, had a couple of nice takes to the basket, drew some fouls, got to the free throw line a little bit. He had this one in particular, like a mid-post sort of action where he caught it, backed his man down, spun baseline, and then took it at Chet and finished over the top of Chet, which is really impressive. So, and then the second half, even though the game was lost, I didn't mind Monty keeping him out there to get his confidence back. He hit a couple of threes and got to the line, and just finishing with 17 points, I feel like just would give him just that little bit extra of, maybe not confidence, but just rhythm going into the Portland game, to be like, all right, didn't finish with 8 or 9 points. Like, not that I think Cade's obsessed with stats, but I feel like just ending the night on a little bit of a high, on a positive note, at least from a shooting standpoint, should help him going into the next game and overall sort of help the team. So didn't mind Monty keeping him out there. But needs to rein in those turnovers, and I'll be very interested to see how he bounces back against the Blazers, because after a frustrating night against the Hornets with foul trouble, he had a 20-point, 10 assist double against the Bulls, and between him and Jalen Duren, they were unstoppable. So it should be very interesting and exciting to see him tomorrow in action against the Blazers. All right, guys, that'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit that subscribe button. Please drop a like. Please drop a comment below on anything I might have missed. Do you agree with some of my points? Do you disagree with something I said? Let me know in the comments below. Always love jumping in, having a chat with all of you. But until tomorrow night, go Pistons.